So let's sit down today and have an honest conversation about how bad this winter is and was. Not like 30 feet of snow everywhere type of bad, but more of like 30 inches of rain. And let's not forget the tricks the atmosphere played on us to give many of us false hope. The second half of this episode, we're going to be talking about the record warmth that hit much of the US. When normally there should have been a foot of snow, you looked around and people were in shorts instead. This winter was really just crazy looking at it overall, and it's something that, we've seen these in the past, but not to this degree. And what happened is with this entire system over the winter, we had system after system come through, and these systems, rather than just being like warm then cold, they were warm, but they just kept getting hotter. And so that's where we break these records. So it's not a problem of it got warmer, it's the fact of how hot it actually got. So it's something that's weird. This happens different years and that type of thing. It's not 100% due to climate change. It's just how the jet stream goes and everything. But what is due to climate change is really that, how hot it gets. So that's really what we're going to be looking at here, because it's a really fascinating thing to look into, because you never really see winters like this. With meteorological winter ending its seemingly never-ending life, we will look back at, what all happened. So the main goal is by the end to see if climate change is the cause of this, or was it just a fluke in nature. So as I mentioned, there is that jet stream problem, but, there are driving factors that could be a climate change, factor with this. So we're going to have to look into that. So this is a prediction back from New Year's Day that the Weather Channel made. And they said basically everything north of, I'm going to say the top part of Michigan. So you have most of the Northeast, including almost all of New York. And then you go in the, kind of the top half of Idaho over into Washington and Oregon. And, the Dakotas and everything. That's going to be, near or slightly below average. And that is something that we have seen. Now, a little bit more cut into Minnesota and Wisconsin, because we see many of these cold fronts that move through, putting temperatures down, in the singles or negative digits. So that's definitely below average. But something that, was fascinating then that they could predict from January to March from New Year's Day is the near or slightly above average temperatures. So that is the core of the U.S. right there. All of California, all the way over into Pennsylvania and the Ohio Valley, and even parts of Virginia. So that is extremely accurate on the slightly above average side. One thing they couldn't have gotten more correct is above average down, all of Texas, almost the entire state of Oklahoma other than the Panhandle, and all of the South. All of that is above average. And that's due, you can actually kind of see it with that near or slightly below average line there. You see like the kind of arc, and that's how all these jet streams have gone. So it's fascinating to see, look at it. It's exactly how these have all set up. So you have all of these really hot temperatures kind of being pulled up from the, Gulf, and that means that everybody's breaking records in the South. And we've had, record high lows. So the low temperature was the highest it's ever been. The high temperature, I don't know about the, I don't think there were many records broken for that. But looking, it's winter time. We should be having cold temperatures, but instead, we've had more rain than anything else. But in those places that are near or slightly below average, they have gotten all of the snow this year. They've gotten a lot of it. And a interesting thing about, kind of that northeast sector, they are at such a deficit, of snow. And it's amazing to see how many other places, and we'll get into this in a little bit, how many places have topped some of the biggest cities in the Northeast. So let's look back at last year. It was the second warmest year on record, and it seems to have offered more snow to the nation than this year thus far. So is that a sign, maybe, that, this year might break the records from last year? And since last year was the second warmest year on record, and it got so much snow, is that a correlation to this year? So the past 5 years have been the warmest of the last 140 years. This past year, they were 1.8 degrees Fahrenheit warmer than the 1951 1980 temperature recordings. Every decade since the 1960s clearly has been warmer than the one before. We crossed over into more than 2 degrees Fahrenheit warming territory in 2015 and are unlikely to go back. This shows that what's happening is persistent, not a fluke due to some weather phenomenon. We know that long-term trends have been driving by increasing levels of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. So that's from ScienceDaily.com. So is that the correlation that we're going to be talking about? Is that what we're going to see here? So many of you have seen these jet streams, and they have been weird this year. Just to give you a visual picture of it, you have them kind of arcing all the way across the U.S. And, you have them go from basically west of Texas, and they go all the way up and kind of over Ohio and Michigan. And then they kind of cut back down at the last second, kind of in the very east part of the Northeast. So when you look at that, everything to the northwest and west of that is going to be getting snow. So we've seen all of these places getting, a massive lack of snow. Very little snow compared to what normally is falling. So even temperatures have been extremely high. And the Washington Post has shown, how much snow, locations have seen more snow than Washington, D.C. In D.C., as of February 11th, had 0.6 inches. 0.6. So this map shows basically how much of the country and places in the deep south actually have some more. Like there's places in Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, and even into Southern California where they have more snow currently than Washington, D.C., which is pretty far north. I mean, it's not extremely north, but it's up there. And, average seasonal accumulations for the date is 11.2 inches. Just look at that, 11.2 inches, and look how far it is from, where it's at now. It's almost, a foot from that. So it's been, the sixth warmest winter to date in Washington. We've had super warm temperatures there. And it's a big thanks to the strongly positive Arctic Oscillation, or AO, which has resulted in frigid air remaining bottled up over the northern latitudes rather than spilling south. And the AO reached its highest value on record. That has been a major contributor to spring-like winter for much of the eastern United States and Europe. So this map kind of shows, how hot it actually has been. And that's just crazy up there, to see so much. And that's why we see some of the ice caps and things melting. It's a real problem. So, that's all from the Washington Post. And that's all crazy. So looking at that, is that a correlation to climate change? Well, let's look at something that researchers around the world have been putting together for quite a few years now. You've probably seen it in the news. Whether or not you believe it, this result will make your head turn. So this is the doomsday clock. And when it hits midnight, that signifies the beginning of the apocalypse, or in the climate's case, the point of no return. And so they put it to 100 seconds to midnight. And a few years ago, it crossed 2 minutes and everyone freaked out. It's now 1 minute and 30 seconds. Minute and 40 seconds. Think about that. That's crazy. That's too close. And, it's not like just some random clock that people put together. It's a real thing that they study. They do it based on, nuclear tensions and based on climate change and everything. And so once this thing hits midnight, we cannot change our Earth. And everything's just going to keep getting worse. And this isn't just a chain reaction. It'll occur over a time past this point. So it's not like, bam, they hit the midnight, all of a sudden the whole world ends instantly. It's going to go very slowly. And that's just the kind of general census. I mean, who knows? That could be wrong too. But looking at it, that's kind of our way of seeing, okay, where are we in trying to help our Earth? And the most recent one read the doomsday clock is 100 seconds to midnight. This clock also takes in factors, growing threats of nuclear war, climate change, and even disinformation. So it is the first time the clock has passed the 2-minute mark in more than 70 years of existence. The doomsday clock has wavered between 2 and 17 minutes to the apocalypse since the inception of it in 1947. Last year, the clock did not budge, remaining at 2 minutes to midnight after advancing 30 seconds in 2018. It has also advanced 30 seconds in 2017, but did not move at all in 2016. So looking at all that, let's analyze that real quick. So they started out the clock at about, I think it was 17 minutes was the first time they started it at. And now we are down to a few seconds. And, that's a big problem there. So seeing that it goes around, if we can get a year where it goes, where we get some distance from that, even like 20-something seconds would help. Because, even if you don't believe in that or think about that or anything, believe in our scientists that, figure that out, it's going to be just look around. It's a real process. And that's just, a visual representation. You can also go outside and look and see how much of the trees are being cut down and how much CO2 is in the atmosphere. But looking at this is kind of a generalized statement that you could see. And that's something that's going to be a huge, factor looking forward is what's our progress. Once we really get into this, it's going to be, a progress kind of check and report to see what all is going on. And whenever you have 100 seconds, that makes you really think, okay, we need to start doing some things. So that's something that's going to really encourage a lot of people. I think it's going to be very good. But, all of this warm weather I don't think it's due to climate change. We normally think of it as it would be, but rather than an anomaly in the jet stream. However, the warmest temperatures, as I said at the beginning, are caused by climate change. We just have a weird jet stream this year. It's bringing more of that warm, moist air to the north. And that's not weird. That air is always there. Now, it is a lot hotter down there near the equator, and so that's breaking records. So that's where, that climate change factor comes into play. But whenever, you're just bringing some warm air to the north, I don't think that's climate change. The climate is changing, but not to the point that we are causing it. And, record temperatures and adding normal, it's so extreme now. We go from being, I've recorded a few numbers that were like 60 degrees above average recently. And in the wintertime, that is not okay. When you have temperatures 70 and 80 degrees in the middle of December, and normally, in years past, that date you have had like 6 inches of snow, that's something that it's unprecedented. You don't see that. And it's something that, this looking at everything and the climate kind of reports, it's a problem. And, it's good to see that so many people are trying to fix it, but I don't know how much it's actually helping. That's why we need a lot more people to work on it and be aware of it and make the public aware of this. So eventually this could be a totally change due to climate change. Temperatures around the world could be this hot, and winter may never be the same. And, we're just going to have to see what happens with this. We might not see snow in some of these places of the world anymore. That's, of course, if it just continues like this. If, we could fix it, maybe we can get back to it. But it's going to be a problem that's going to hit us for a really long time until we can get this fixed. And it's only getting worse. But there are a lot of, solar and wind-powered resources that are helping. So that should encourage everybody that we are working on it and coming up with ideas. So, just kind of close out the episode here, looking back on everything. It's all fascinating to see all of that. But this winter has just been weird overall. I think we can all agree on that. That, it's just been so out there and warm. And so, it's been great for a lot of people who have really liked it. It's wonderful to be able to go outside and do some things. But it's just weird, and it makes you kind of worry and start to look into things a little bit more. Because this isn't supposed to happen on an everyday occasion. So, looking ahead, could we continue getting more snow? How much snow will fall if we do? And the bigger question, will the climate recover? Can we figure out a way to, protect everything? And kind of revert back to, what the environment should be. Will the clock hit midnight? That's going to be a problem if it is. But we can, I think, work, on that. I think we could work, and we have many ideas out there that I think are revolutionizing, climate and science. So, climate science on its own right now is very, it produced a lot in the early 1900s, and now we have perfected that in a way. Not every data reading is is perfection, but we can get to a point that I think that we can work and improve everything. And if we see a change to our winters from cold and snowy to hot and rainy, what's that going to look like? Are we still going to have snow? What's going to happen with that? That's going to be a worst case scenario. And we hope not to look into that, but it could happen. Looking at, it's 100 seconds. And if you put that to a climate aspect, it's probably going to be less than that. A lot of people recently have been saying, a lot of climate scientists have been referring to we have less than a decade. Those dates have gone between, 5 and 10 years. And that's not saying that's when, the whole world's going to end or anything. It's not a 2012 type of thing. But it's more of a what's the point of kind of no return, to where, we've damaged it so much that it's going to be really hard and almost impossible to get back to where it was when we deemed it, okay. And what will Earth look like in the future? Will it be rock and sand? Or will we recover and be better than today, more vegetation? Whenever the Earth is burning all the time, because, we see 1.5 degree warming in Australia, and all of a sudden the entire continent is on fire. We see half a degree warming and California is on fire. We see 1 degree warming and all of the West is on fire. Seeing what 2, 3, and even 5 degrees could cause, we could see a change in seasons. And a change in seasons is going to allow more fires. Fire season could spread and be a longer time. So what's that going to look like in the future? That is the big question there. And that's why it's so important to study all this and figure out, okay, this happened in the past. How can we react to it or fix it or even prevent it from happening in the future? So yeah, thank you all so much for listening, watching if you're on YouTube. Make sure to stay tuned for our podcasts that are going to be coming up here. We got some really interesting ones, some on forecasting, and even some ones on some national parks as we get closer to the spring. And yeah, some really interesting things. So yeah, make sure to check out our forecasts also. Those will be posted on Mondays. We have 5 days out right now. I'm going to be posting some weekend ones coming up so we can, kind of give you that advanced look into the weekend so you can plan ahead and, also have the most accuracy possible. So check out our social medias, links in the description, and stay tuned for any new updates or EDU videos posted during the week. And yeah, since we're getting closer to spring, a lot of content to cover. So that's why some of these podcasts have been shorter, and I kind of like, being able to cover a lot more. So hopefully you're enjoying these and staying tuned to that. And yeah, I hope you all have a great day, and thank you again for listening and watching.